Hey, let me ask you a question. Are you dealing with some less than desired behavior from your kids? If the answer is yes, then this is the podcast for you. I just want to encourage you to tune in, and you might need to share this with somebody if they're dealing with some less than desired behavior with their kids. We're going to get to the root issue, the root causes as to why kids struggle to behave correctly. Be encouraged and strengthened as you hear this message today. We created this platform, this podcast, to try to help people in their marriage and their family. So we call it Family by Design. And it's to really address problems and be able to fix it. And so we try to have
solution,
bring solution. And so we try to have fun, but there's a lot of problems in this life. And so there's a lot of things that need spoken to. And we don't have the answer to everything, but we certainly have learned a few things along the way that have really helped us. And that's why we just like to share this. And one of the things is dealing with children that have like bad behavior or less than desired behavior, troubling behavior. So in other words, the actions that you're seeing them do are not the actions that they need to be doing, and not necessarily by some strict standard, but you're seeing disorder and dysfunction in what is being produced in their life. And so it's coming to this place of figuring out how to deal with that. And I feel like this is an area where you have a real strength in, because of how we've handled some of things with our kids, even from a young age. And so when you have especially a younger child, and the thing is that if you don't train your children when they're younger, you just are going to have to do a lot more praying when they get older.
That's right.
Because training is supposed to take place in the formative years, which in my opinion is from birth until about 5 years old. And once they've hit past 5 and hit to 5, even really 5, 6, 7 years old, they're in many ways are not that you can't continue to train them, but they're already set in patterns. And so when you see bad behavior when they're younger, but I'll say even when you see bad behavior when they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 into their teen years, you can still should be able to address that bad behavior, but you have to do it right if you want to get the right results. And so especially, let's go from the ages of 4 to 10, when you're seeing bad behavior in a child, what are things that you can do to begin to address that?
First off, stay out of frustration. As the parent, if you are frustrated, you lack control. And when you lack control, that's when things get chaotic.
You say control of yourself.
Control of yourself. Things get chaotic because you're wanting them to conform to some image, yet you haven't been consistent in making clear stated boundaries. So kids need to know boundaries. Your yes means yes. Your no means no, and you need to be consistent in that. If they know they can nudge you, or if they know that you say, I don't know, or maybe, or sometimes, or I'm going to give you opportunity one more time, or I'm going to even count to 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
That is not clear defined boundaries, because all of a sudden you're counting. I'm going to count to 4. Oh, I'm going to count to 5. Oh, I'm going to count again.
You don't mean what you mean.
You don't, and they know that. Like our children are so smart. You don't think that they are smart, but they actually sometimes, I think, know us better than we know ourselves. And they know our inconsistencies, or they pick up on our inconsistencies quicker than and then our consistencies. I can remember I was having some pain because we had a very challenging child, and he knew how to get me to this place of frustration.
Correction, we have a challenging child.
Yes. Really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home and or being frustrated, and you saying to me, this is your problem. It is not his problem. It's your problem, because I was not being consistent, because my yes was not being yes, my no was not being no. There were not clear defined boundaries. This takes work on our part. And oftentimes, because of everything that goes into life, we get lazy, we get tired, we feel guilty, and we just want our kids to conform to some image, and they're not actually made.
And I think, yes, and I think a lot of times us wanting to get our kids to function and behave correctly, honestly, is birthed from selfishness. Oftentimes,
It is
on our
because
part,
we want it for
we just
ourselves.
want peace. We just
Right.
don't want to deal with it anymore.
We don't want it to reflect on what other people think about us.
Right.
We want them to just do what it is that
It's
we
selfishness
say.
and wrong motivation.
It is. It is. And so we have to come to, and I was going to get to this point, to the grips that training our children, correcting our children, providing safe boundaries for our children is for them.
Yeah.
And when we are consistent and we do it over and over, then guess what happens? We get to reap the benefits
That's right.
of our children being obedient, of our children knowing the boundaries and staying within the boundaries.
Everybody reaps the benefits short term and long term.
That's right.
Because what you don't figure out how to train when they're younger, you're going to have to deal with it when they're older. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost, and especially strong-willed ones, and rebellion. In severe cases, jail time. Babies out of wedlock, all kinds of things like that. And you have to learn how to straighten some of those things out when they're younger. But I think that one thing, this is something I really want to hear from you, that it's not really, because you can have particular behaviors that you address and you say no, and when they're real young, you discipline them, you give them a spanking, so there's consequences to their actions.
Right.
But then you deal with situations, and we had one of our children in particular who's basically, just a good kid. But we saw behavior that we didn't like, and it's just true with all of them. But with him in particular, there was things going on inside of his thinker and the way he was thinking and processing that we started to identify there's a real war going on here, and we need to help him win the war. And so I think there's a couple of ways of looking at the wrong behavior or bad behavior. It could be that your child just needs disciplined.
Right.
And you're not disciplining them, which I believe, so training your child is a combination of disciplining them and teaching them.
Right.
Combined will
That's
help
right.
train your child. So your child just might need some training, but sometimes your child doesn't just need training. They also need some understanding to be able to win the battle that's going on the inside of them that is causing a manifestation in behavior that is less than desired. And so I think those things can go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And I think most of the time that they do. But when in our particular instance, we've trained all of our boys. I believe, the best that we could. We weren't
Right.
perfect at it. But when it came to this particular instance, there was something deeper at work going on. And we had to really take it to the Lord and say, God, you have to show us how to minister to this particular need with this particular one.
Right. So I think there are ways that you can continue to be consistent in training and disciplining. That's super important. But whenever you continue to see the same behavior happen over and over and over, we've gone past, this is to me outside the bounds of, it's not a listening thing, it's not an obedience thing.
Right.
It is something actually deeper.
It's spiritual.
It's something deeper going on.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes we just want to fix the problem. And so we will do all the things that we know to do. I'm being consistent. I've read the books. I've asked people what they're doing. I'm doing all this, and I'm not seeing this thing change. I'm not seeing any difference. What is going on? And then we end up getting frustrated. And then as a parent, with genuine concern, we'll start reacting to their reacting. And then we've developed this crazy just cycle of chaos where there is no peace anymore because this one's trying to control the situation or you're trying to, whatever. It's not working. And we forget the first thing we should do is invite the Lord into the situation.
Right.
Because all of our kids are so individual. We also have to realize that there's an enemy in this world who is seeking to destroy everybody, and that he brings lies to our children even. This is true because he brings lies to us as adults that we have to take control of, we have to navigate, we have to say, is this actually a truth or is it a lie? Can I differentiate between the two? We're having to do this all on ourselves, and we know the struggle within our own mind. So imagine a child who does not have the reasoning skills within themselves. They don't currently possess the ability to say, stop, is this real or is this not real?
Yeah.
And they have to be taught.
So somebody has to watch over their minds.
That's right.
Until they know how to watch over their own minds, their own heart.
And as parents, we are watchmen.
That's right.
Over our children. That is part of training your child, is not only the discipline issue so they won't be rebellious, terrible individuals in society. It's so that they can learn how to navigate their emotions, navigate the thoughts that they're thinking.
Right.
And there are lies that the enemy, this is usually what happens, is that the enemy will start planting lies in their minds towards the direction they're actually called to go.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right.
And so he doesn't want them. It's so emotional for me because it's so important for our children that we teach them. So, and we guard over them because the enemy does want to steal, kill, and destroy their life before their life even gets started.
And if he can steal their identity, that's where the killing and the destroying come in. And a lot of the things, and I tell people this often, the area you're struggling in the most, whatever fear or whatever lie you might be believing, you can identify it. You'll probably find that it's working in opposition to the thing that the Lord has called you to. And so to give an example of this, nobody dealing with severe rejection issues can confidently be speaking in public. You can't confidently do it. And the thing that I dealt with my whole life, and I've even had dreams that showed me things going all the way back from my childhood, and I basically grew up in a good home, but I dealt with the issue of rejection so strong. Not because my parents rejected me, but because of lies that I believed. And that carried over even to my adulthood and even into pastoring. I mean, the battle that I've struggled with rejection and feeling rejected. And the emotions are real, but they're based on lies of the enemy. And it's all to try to get me to not do the thing that God has called me to do. And so when you find your child, and that's just one example, you find your child is really struggling in an area, the importance of breaking it off can mean the difference between them being destroyed and defeated versus them stepping into the ultimate call that God has for their life. It is that important. And so it's more than just a behavior issue. There's a root to it.
That's right.
And sometimes there's a little bit of rebellion that needs to be driven out there with the child, and you do that. The rod of correction drives the rebellion out of the heart of a child. I believe that the word backs that up, and proof is in the pudding for us. We've seen lots of rebellion driven out over the years with learning how to properly discipline children. But sometimes you'll find a spiritual battle that's warring in your child's mind that is causing the bad behavior. It's not as simple sometimes as, they're just being rebellious. Sometimes it is. Frankly, that's the easiest to deal with. They're like, listen, you straighten up, or these are the consequences to your actions if you continue to disobey. And they'll either do it and then reap the consequences and stop, or they'll be scared of the consequences and they'll stop.
Right.
Easy, right? No
Right.
problem. But when it comes to the inner workings, that's where it becomes more complicated. And the only way you can fix the inner workings of yourself, but certainly a different mind in your child's mind, is you have to have the help of the Holy Spirit. You cannot do it without the Lord's help. But we are the guardians, the watchmen, the protectors over our homes and over our children. And when your child is dealing with severe emotional things and feeling tormented, you can, sometimes you need to say, suck it up, buttercup, and move on. But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes they're dealing with some real things and you need to take authority over that.
That's right.
I remember our niece, my sister's daughter, Kayla, when she was real little, she used to wake up in the middle of the night and she would just scream. I think one time she stayed in the same room as you and I when we first got married. And I don't remember if she did that or not, but there were several times where she would be with a grandparent or her parents. And of course, as the story was told, is that she would just wake up and just scream, like terror scream. Well, they had to address that, not with, now you stop doing that. I mean, she wasn't trying to do it.
Right.
She was having an attack on her mind that they had to tell her, look, we need to take authority over this thing and come against it because this is a spiritual assault against you. And our kids have a call in their life. And when the enemy gets, and every kid has a call in their life, not just ministry kids, but every kid does. And when the enemy gets wind of that, then he's going to work against it. That's just what he does. So we have to be prepared to realize that we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
right.
but against principalities, against the rulers, all that stuff. So sometimes that manifests in dealing with just rebellion, which can mostly feel and look natural, but at the root of it is the enemy. But then sometimes you're dealing with a dysfunction in your child that is flat out demonic, and you need to help that child win the war. Sometimes you need to take authority over the enemy. Mm-hmm. You know, we're told to do that stuff in the Word, and so approaching the dysfunction and the problem within your child is oftentimes needs to go to a deeper level to where you go, why are they acting like they're acting? Why are they thinking like they're thinking?
That's
and they're
right.
in a war, and we're only dealing with the behavior. And because we're not dealing with the root, all we're doing is frustrating that child because they're not feeling heard.
Right, and ultimately only put a Band-Aid on the situation.
Right.
The situation will never go away until the root is identified and then dealt with.
That's exactly right.
And so a lot of times it takes time. Like the war, you can take authority and you can say no more, but then we have to retrain thought patterns and thought processes with saying, we don't remember, that's not how we think anymore. So if it's fear, sometimes kids act out in anger, aggression because they're scared.
Yeah.
And it's the only way they know how to control something.
Yeah.
And so they need to come to a place where they need to know they don't have to be afraid because God is with them, and that they can acknowledge the Lord and they can invite him and they can have tools to be able to defeat the thing that it is that they're scared of, so they don't have to feel like they need to control something.
Yeah, that's right.
And then sometimes it's just it's simple lies. They seem simple, but all of a sudden when they go so deep, nobody likes me. I'm not valuable. I'm worth nothing. And you have these kids who all of a sudden commit suicide or because they didn't feel valued. They didn't feel like anybody cared. And all it was that the enemy kept reassuring a lie that they believed to take their life. Now,
the people in their life didn't help them combat it because they weren't paying attention. Right.
And so we have to pay attention. I'm not saying, that ultimately a person is responsible for them.
Sure, if they get older and commit suicide, that was their decision.
But like as children, if we can reassure them that they are loved, that they are accepted by the Lord, most importantly, that he cared for them, that he designed them, that he created them for something, tell them the truth, find them a scripture, a part of the word that they can begin to put into their lives, because the word is active, it is powerful, it is the thing that will win. And even if it doesn't pertain to maybe the situation, it's still the word. Like, it will help because it will defeat the lie of the enemy. Now, it's good to find the particular lie that they're believing and replace it with a truth, not just, oh, well, I love you. Because sometimes when we do things or act a certain way towards our children, they don't feel loved by us. They might not feel approved by us. But they can always feel the approval of God. They can always know that God loves them because we've given them the word. We've encouraged them to invite him into their life, into their experience, encourage them to ask the Lord to make himself known and real.
Yeah.
Then that is how we start the process with them. They know that they can do this because we've shown them how to do this to be successful in their own life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that whenever people find, I think the ultimate purpose in life for everybody is to be loved by God. But whenever people find, I'll say purpose in the sense of what they're supposed to be doing, it will often kind of autocorrect behavior. And let me give you kind of an example of this. Jesus went and he met the woman at the well, and the disciples were like, where'd you go? And he's saying where he was. And they said, well, we need to feed you. And he said, I already ate. And they're like, who fed him? And he said, my meat is to do the will of the Father and to finish the work that he sent me to do. And so Jesus, it was almost like he was equivalating purpose and destiny and God's will, the Father's will, to what his actions, what he was doing. And so the thing that drove Jesus to do what he was doing, what was most important, what was food for him, and of course that was figurative speech, was to do the purpose that he was there to do. So when your kids find purpose, God's purpose, first of all, to be loved by him, it's our highest purpose, but then to do the specific assignments that God has for us, there's fulfillment in that, and it will cause things to become straightened out because we're supposed to find our identity in him. And I'll say closely tied to our identity is what we're doing.
Right.
That's not our identity, but it is very closely tied to it and its purpose. And when we find that out, it kind of straightens some things out. So a lot of times kids don't I think it's all the above. It's dealing with them on a level of disciplining. It's dealing with them helping take control over their thoughts, but then it's also getting them on the path that God called them to, and they're going to have better results in their life that way.
That's right.
Hopefully this really stirred some, for all of the listeners, they're thinking on this, that they can begin to win this war and see behavior change as it needs to with their kids.
That's
so
right.
Praise God. And I'll say one more thing is that God has graced you, mom and dad.
That's right.
He has graced you and he's given you what you need to raise your kids. Seek him and he's going to give you everything you need to train your kids up in the way they're supposed to go. You got the goods. You got the goods. Yeah.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation. We hope this has and will continue to encourage you in your marriage and family. Don't forget to download and comment and share this episode. You can check out Ward Ministries at wardmen.org. If you have any questions, please email us at info@wardmen.org. Keep your eye out weekly for our latest conversation on marriage and family.